Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. This is what he says. He's still speaking to the serpent. I will put enmity, that means hostility. I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. And it shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. This is considered to be the first prophecy about Jesus. And the seed of the woman, metaphorically speaking, the seed of the woman that he speaks of here that will come and bruise, what did he say? It shall bruise thy head, the seed of the woman, is Jesus, is Christ. He will crush his head or bruise your head. That means he will destroy his authority, is what that means. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. That means he'll strike him and injure him, but you'll crush him. He will crush you, but you're going to injure him. It's a prophecy of Jesus. Through his suffering and his death and the things that were done to him had the effect of crushing Satan or crushing his authority. But notice the way he refers to it. The seed of the woman is Jesus, but who is the seed of the serpent? Now, Satan is a spirit, though he is being spoken of as a serpent here. He doesn't have seed in the natural sense. He doesn't have children. A spirit can't have physical offspring. Does that make sense? But metaphorically speaking, notice what Jesus said. What did he say in verse 44? John chapter 8, verse 44. You are of your father the devil, and the lust of your father you will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaks a lie, he speaks of his own, for he's a liar and the father of it. He's saying that though the serpent can't pass on seed in a physical sense, he can't have children in that kind of a sense, though he gave a fallen nature to man. And that's the way that the seed of Satan, we might say, is fallen man. And he says, you know what, you are, going back to Adam, you're fallen just like he was, and you've got a nature that's not right with God. You've got a nature that's contrary to God. And he's alluding to, when he says this, that very prophecy that we just read, that the seed of the serpent is going to bruise the heel, so to speak, of Christ, metaphorically saying it's going to kill him or injure him or put him to death. But in that act, he's going to crush the head of Satan. Now, he doesn't mean by this, there's all kinds of wild and crazy and strange doctrines that people have come up with about this. Some people, like, I don't even know how to characterize it, would say, well, the Jews are the seed of Satan. That's not true at all. He doesn't mean just them. He just means fallen man. And he says, you're no different than any kind of fallen humanity. That's the point he's making here. All right, let's see. What else do we want to say about this? Let's skip to the end, verse 54. Jesus answered and said, if I honor myself, my honor is nothing. If it is my Father that honors me, of whom you say that he is your God, you have not known him, but I know him. And if I should say I know him not, I would be a liar like you. But I know him and keep his saying. Your father Abraham rejoiced to see my day, and he saw it and was glad. That's worth comment. When did Abraham see the day of Jesus? It says, your father Abraham saw my day, and he rejoiced and he was glad. Well, we're not told that he necessarily, literally saw it, but metaphorically, spiritually, he saw it. And he doesn't explain it here. He doesn't tell us when. But here's what I think. This is my opinion about it. There's a very famous story about Abraham. He had a son by promise, which was called Isaac, a supernatural son by the promise of God. God waited until Abraham was an old man and without strength to conceive seed. His wife Sarah was barren her whole life, and she couldn't have children. And miraculously, God gave them a supernatural son. Does that remind you of anybody else you've ever heard of? Yeah? Does that remind you of Jesus? It's supposed to remind you of Jesus. It's a figure or a symbol of Jesus. And so God says to Abraham, take this son of yours, Isaac is his name, this supernatural son born by promise, and I want you to take him up on this mountain, Mount Moriah, and offer him as a sacrifice there. Well, Abraham, he just did what God told him, and he took him up on the mountain, and Isaac, they're about partway there, and Isaac says, well, I see the fire, and I see the wood, but where's the sacrifice? And Abraham's answer is very interesting. He says, the Lord will provide himself the sacrifice, which is an interesting thing about that. Abraham evidently saw something in that action more than just what it was. If Abraham didn't see more to it, then he would have what would you do? You know, this is the way this is usually preached. Well, God is going to come and He's going to make you give away the thing that you love the most. Because look what He did to Abraham. And Abraham probably, you know, I've seen sometimes they present it this way to children. Abraham bawling his eyes, oh God, oh why me? And pulling his hair. And no, Abraham wasn't like that. Abraham evidently understood that his covenant partner, he was in covenant with God. That God asking this of him, this supernatural child, that evidently he must have somehow understood. Evidently, God's going to have a supernatural son, and this is the sacrifice. Because when they get up to the mountain, and Abraham binds Isaac and puts him on the altar to sacrifice him, an angel comes and stops him and stays his hand, and he says, "Don't kill him. Don't kill Isaac, your son. There's a lamb, a ram, who's a male lamb. There's a lamb over here who's caught in the thicket. Offer the lamb instead." You know, I believe that Abraham, in the process of that. Let's go back and read that. Can we read that just for a second? I think there's something interesting. I want to. That's in Genesis chapter. Let's see. I can find that. Chapter 22, I think, is where that is. Genesis chapter 22. And let's see here. Verse. Is that where that is? Oh yeah, verse 13. Let's take it up there. Genesis chapter 22. Genesis 22, verse 13. Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him, a ram caught in the thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered him for a burnt offering instead of his son. This is very illustrative of a couple of things. First of all, the first word that Abraham got was go and offer your son. There's got to be a death, and you go and offer Isaac. But God came back and gave Abraham a second word. And the second word was, in effect, what I required of you, I will myself fulfill. That's in effect what he did. I required you a death. I required a death of you. But now, the second time he comes back, he gives you a little more insight, and he says, now what I first told you to do, I'm going to step in, I'm going to do it myself. And Abraham lifted up his eyes, and behold, the ram caught in the thicket by his horns. Abraham went and took the ram and offered him for a burnt offering instead of his son. And Abraham called the name of the place, listen, Jehovah-Jireh. Now, when I first became a Christian, we used to sing this song all the time. Jehovah-Jireh, you know. And what it means, let's go on reading. Jehovah-Jireh, as it is said to this day, in the mount of the Lord, it shall be seen. Now, Jehovah-Jireh literally means the Lord will provide. The Lord will provide. And when we used to sing that song, we would sing Jehovah-Jireh, Jehovah-Jireh. And what we were thinking is, the Lord will provide for me, and He'll give me all the money I need, you know. That's the way we thought of it, you know. Which, that's okay. You know, I'm not opposed to the idea that God helps us and God takes care of us and He has all kinds of ways of doing that. But there's something more important than that. There's something bigger than that. There's something more important to hear than that. Notice what it says. Notice that it says it is called Jehovah-Jireh. If your Bible is a reference Bible, mine is, in the margin by Jehovah-Jireh, there's a little expression. It says literally what Jehovah-Jireh means, the Lord will see. I've looked it up before. The word Jireh literally means to foresee. To foresee. The Lord will foresee. What does that mean? The Lord foresees what the need is and provides for the need. Now, the real need is not just that you need a job and you need to earn money, which is true. We do need that. Don't get me wrong. We need to have income. You know, I'm not against that side of it. But there's something more that we need that's more important than that. And that's what the Lord has foreseen that we would need, and that is a sacrifice. The Lord foresaw and knew and provided that what He first foresaw was that we can't relate to Him on our own, that we need somebody to step in to be like the ram, the lamb that's caught in the thicket, to be offered in our place, that a sacrifice is necessary. So when Jesus said, Abraham saw my day and rejoiced, I think this is when it was. I think Abraham was a guy with some insight. He was a man in covenant with God, and I think he had some insight into this, that he looked ahead and said, God, you're going to send a supernatural son, and he's going to be a sacrifice. And he called this Jehovah-Jireh. The Lord has foreseen what I and everybody else needs is somebody to come from heaven, like Jesus, and to step into the gap and to be for us what we can't be for ourselves, and to bridge the gap between us and God by being the sacrifice that makes everything right between us and God. Let's all stand up today.